Right, what's happening, people, and welcome back to the Joey Knight podcast. Now, I need you lot to do me a favour. At the end of this video, if you enjoyed the content and you want to see more from myself, please hit the subscribe button and also click the bell so that you get a notification every time one of my videos goes live. Anyway, let's get into the video. So, in the early hours of last night, or this morning, whatever you want to call it, quite a lot of you, including myself, stayed up to watch the Chelsea against Newcastle game. The game actually finished the same as the last game of the season at Stamford Bridge in a 1-1 draw, but this was a very different game to that one I just mentioned. Before I break down the performance, I just want to go on record as saying I've been really impressed with us this pre-season. Everyone will tell me that pre-season doesn't mean anything and the results in pre-season don't have any bearing on how your season goes, but actually, if you look at recent form of teams' pre-season performances, it would suggest that pre-season does actually mean something and it does have a bearing on your results going forward. I've pretty much always watched Chelsea in pre-season and I've never actually seen this standard of intensity from my club or even the teams we're playing in those pre-season games. The standard of football is constantly improving. The competition for places is constantly increasing and the stakes are constantly rising. And for that reason, Pochettino was right when he said that there really are no friendlies when you're playing for Chelsea. And from what I've seen out on the pitch so far, these games really haven't been friendlies. Let's be honest, we've looked good, haven't we? We absolutely smashed Wrexham, the League Two side that anyone could beat, yet Man United failed to beat them a couple of days ago. We pumped Brighton on Saturday night, and if you didn't actually watch that game, don't let the close scoreline fool you. We were a much better team in that game. That scoreline flattered Brighton to an extent. And last night, I thought we were a better team against Newcastle. And you got to remember, Newcastle had a way better season than us. They finished above us in the league. They've got way more stability than us with their coach and also most of their players being there a lot longer than most of our players that were on the pitch last night. And let's not forget, they accumulated nearly 30 more points than us last season. So as much as we can say that we hold ourselves to a higher standard and maybe over recent years we've got more history than Newcastle, you can only really deal with the here and now and you can only beat what's in front of you. And in the here and now, on recent form, Newcastle have been a better side than us. And if you don't like Chelsea, that's fine. If you think we had no history before Roman Abramovich arrived, that's fine. But if you can tell me you have seriously watched us in this pre-season and all that being said, you don't think that we are going to compete for Champions League spaces next season, I'm telling you, you're just blinded by your hatred for the club, because believe me now, we will be there or thereabouts next season when it comes to competing for those Champions League spots. Anyway, let's go through some of the positives of the game last night. Reece James is back. He got about an hour of football. Obviously, he's had a long layoff with injury, but most importantly, he was handed the captain's armband while he was on the pitch last night. Now, I am going to make a separate video on exactly who I think will be captain next season, who I think should be captain, discuss the runners and riders for that, so keep your eyes peeled for that video. But it was very good to see Reece James back on the pitch. Listen, he didn't give a jaw-dropping performance, but after many months on the sidelines, I was just happy to see him back on the pitch, and let's be honest, he didn't really put a foot wrong. Now, when Wesley Fofana went down in training and was pretty much ruled out for the whole season, there were serious questions and suggestions that we would need to dip back into the transfer market to get centre-back cover. But from what I've seen so far in these games, including last night, the likes of Trevor Chalobah and Humphreys have gone a long way to easing those problems, and I do think that those two boys can play a pivotal part for us next season. Now, Chalobah's a player that I've always admired ever since he broke into the team and scored a long-range screamer against Crystal Palace on his debut, but I've got to be honest, I didn't know much about Bashir Humphreys, but upon seeing him play, I actually think this young man's going to get minutes next season. I think that, yeah, he will be an option off the bench, but he's looked calm, hasn't he? He's looked composed. All his performances so far, he's looked mature. And I do think that with the likes of him emerging, Trevor Chalobah given minutes by Pochettino when it was been suggested that maybe he would get sold, even with the long-term injury to Wesley Fofana, we're in a good position when it comes to defenders next year. So as a Cassidy, we saw him playing in midfield too last night, and it was a much more disciplined performance than we had seen in the other couple of games that he had featured in. He didn't really venture forward as much as we had seen in the prior two games, but he just remained a real strong presence in that midfield. And do you know what? I'm very interested to see, if we don't sign a first-team starter in that midfield position, who Pochettino is going to pair Enzo with, whether it be Cassidy, Andre Santos, maybe Conor Gallagher. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Now, speaking of Gallagher, he came on once again, and once again he impressed me. It's weird, isn't it? There's sometimes players that pretty much divide the fan base, and Conor Gallagher is definitely one of those players. But I'm telling you now, barring a disastrous career-changing injury, Conor Gallagher, at the end of his career, I think will break into that definitely 20, maybe even 15 of top Premier League appearance makers, whether that be at Chelsea or another club, I can't be sure, but he will make a lot of Premier League appearances in his career. Listen, personally, I would keep Conor Gallagher. I think he's got a really good engine, he's got an eye for goal, and you know what? I think he is unfairly criticised by a lot of fans. But it does look like we could be moving Conor Gallagher on. And what I would say is this, as much as I want to keep him, if the money's right and if it's Pochettino's decision to move him on, then I'll back the manager. I'm going to put my faith in Pochettino and trust that he makes the right decisions. However, if this is a decision above Pochettino's head because of the fact maybe that academy products have 100% profit on their sales, I am not then for moving Conor Gallagher on. If Pochettino wants him, he needs to stay. We need to be giving the manager full control of the goings and comings of this club. Anyway, we'll see what happens with the whole Conor Gallagher thing, but do you want to hear something funny? Only a couple of weeks ago, Burnley put in a £20 million offer for Ian Maatsen. 20 million doesn't get you Ian Maatsen's weak foot. This boy's special, and to say that he's versatile is an understatement. Mate, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised to see Ian Maatsen stick on a pair of gloves and get between the sticks, because this boy can play everywhere. So far, we've seen him at left back, we've seen him in midfield, right wing, left wing. I wouldn't be surprised to see him utilised in more different positions on that pitch, and I think he's going to be a massive, massive player for us going forward. And look, if we look at Pochettino's time in England, he's always sort of had a go-to player in whatever team he's been at that he can utilise and rely on in different positions. And when he first came into the club, I had this in mind. So I was sort of thinking, right, will it be Havertz? Obviously, he then went on to move. Will it be Mount? The same. And then after that, I was sort of thinking maybe it'd be Conor Gallagher, but let's be honest, watching this pre-season is quite clearly Ian Maatsen, isn't it? He got himself another beautiful assist last night, and when I said after that first game that he was forming a really good partnership with Nico Jackson, I was sort of looking at it and thinking, yeah, all right, pre-season, but what's the chances that them two are going to actually have that partnership going into the Premier League campaign, because potentially maybe one or the other might not be in the team, they might not be far enough up the field to be playing near each other, but do you know what? Ian Maatsen and Nicholas Jackson may well fire us to big things next season. Anyway, speaking of the devil, let's go on to the main man, Chelsea's new number 9. Whether or not he has it on the back of his kit, it's Nicholas Jackson. Right, stop me if I'm getting overexcited. But this boy is fucking ridiculous, isn't he? Nicholas Jackson is definitely banging 20 league goals next season for Chelsea. Do you know how refreshing it is to see a striker for Chelsea playing that direct, making those runs in behind the line and not being half a mile offside every time he does it? And I've already admitted that I wasn't sold off the back of Nicholas Jackson's emphatic end to the season with Villarreal last season, but take my money, mate. I am sold. 30 mil for Jackson was ridiculous. 2 goals and 3 assists in, let's be honest, 3 halves of football. Right, it'll go down as 3 matches, but he was subbed off at half time nearly every single time. So yeah, he is going to absolutely terrorise Premier League defences next year, I'm telling you. Look, of course, I would have liked to win last night, but I don't want to be accused of short-termism. I do understand that we've got a project on our hands here. Are we going to go and win the league next season? No, I honestly do think we're going to get Champions League football now after what I've seen though, but it is a project. It's going to take us a couple of seasons until the good times, and I'm talking about league titles, come back to Stamford Bridge. Anyway, it would be very easy for me to cap off this video right here on a high, all positivity, even though we didn't get, well, would you call it 3 points? It's a pre-season friendly, but we do need to talk about some of the negatives that have arose over this game last night and over the pre-season so far. So, Raheem Sterling. I like Sturbo. He's a player that I've always rated, and he's a player that I also think does get an unfair rap from the British media and the British public. However, I will be honest, going on this pre-season, he's not a first-team starter, is he? Sterling could easily still play for top clubs in England and throughout Europe, but on what we need right now, which is more energy, more directness, to be more decisive, I just don't think that Sterling is the man to be in the starting 11 week in, week out next season. His final product doesn't really look great at the moment. He sort of slows things down when he's on the ball, and he lacks that intensity that players like Mudryk, Maatsen, Madueke, when he comes back in, can give us. I think he can be a real good weapon off the bench next season when obviously the play sort of slows down a little bit, legs get tired and the play stretches, but I do think that starting off, I'd definitely put Ian Maatsen over him. I'd put Mudryk over him. And you know what? I'd probably put Noni Madueke over him at the minute. And the other negative's obvious, isn't it? You have heard me speak about this player a lot, and I've tried to avoid it recently because I don't just want to sound like I'm going in and singling out one individual player all the time. But with his performances, it's very hard to not do that. The man I'm talking about is, of course, in my opinion, the worst signing that I have witnessed my club make, and that is Marc Cucurella. Marc Cucurella is not a top-level footballer. As hard as he may try, and as much as I would love him to change my mind, he just ain't cut out for it, is he? I've never known a player to be single-handedly so responsible for the amount of points he has cost us. And you know what? Some games he's actually okay, yeah? But even in those games where he doesn't massively underperform, you can guarantee that he will make a match-changing mistake that leads to us dropping points. And that's exactly what we saw last night for Almiron's goal. For me, he's behind Chilwell, he's behind Maatsen, he's behind Lewis Hall, so I just don't see him getting a lot of minutes next season unless it's for massive injury or if we went to a three at the back, which I can't really see Pochettino doing. And if you do see him on the pitch, I don't believe that's going to be Pochettino's decision. I think that'll be above his head because of the amount of money we've spent on him, and you already know my thoughts on that. So we need to, I would say cash in, but I don't think we get much money for him. We just need to cut our losses on Cucurella. Get rid of him. Newcastle, who we played last night, listen, he ain't really put himself in the shop window of his performance last night, but they obviously do need a left back. Dan Burns been deputising there. Maybe we could offload him to Newcastle. I don't know. I really don't know of Cucurella. Listen, I've got no ill feeling towards him, and it isn't his fault that we spent 60-odd million on him just so that Man City didn't get him, but we just got to chalk this one off as a mistake and get rid of him. Anyway, I want to know what you lot think. What did you think of the performance last night? Are you like me and you're fairly optimistic even though it was a 1-1 draw because you've seen some good things and obviously over the course of this pre-season we've looked really, really good? Or do you regret us not going on and capitalising, seeing off that game and building real momentum when it comes to the fact of next season we can go, right, straight away, we have beat 2 teams that finished above us in the table. Obviously, that's pending to become free on Sunday when we take on Fulham, and guess what? I will be live streaming that match from my YouTube channel. So Sunday, don't know what time kickoff is, 7:45, I think, maybe Sunday evening. I'll be going live maybe 15 minutes before the match or so. So make sure that you hit the bell, subscribe to the channel, and I will see all of you lot on Sunday. Let me know your thoughts on this video in the comments below. I'll be trying to get back to all of you, so let me know what you're thinking. I'll see you in the next one.